welcome to Father Son Flight Sim. Today we're going to be doing a first flight video for the King Air C90 plane that comes stock with the X-Plane 11. It's a much more difficult plane to fly than the Baron or the Cessna, and I've been working my way up to it. Let's get ready for departure. We got all the passengers on board. I'm doing this flight on FS Economy as well. But one of the biggest differences about this airplane that you'll notice is that it's a turboprop driven engine. So the props are actually turned through a jet engine, and because of that the plane behaves very, very differently than the Baron. So in preparation for startup, I'm arming the igniters and getting the power settings. And then I'm going to come over here to the center console, and we're going to be flying above 10,000 feet. So this plane is one of the first pressurized planes that I've been playing around with. We're going to go to about 14,000 feet high, so we need to set our cabin pressure so that the differential is right around maybe 3. I think the maximum differential pressure inside to outside it can take is about 5 pounds per square inch. So about 2.5 to 3 pounds per square inch is great, and I think I set it for maximum altitude of somewhere around 15.5 or somewhere around there. The rate is the rate at which it will pressurize. And notice that I turned on the avionics switch that's also located there, so that the attitude indicator and the heading indicator would come on. You see it's now turned on. Setting my cruising altitude now for the climb to 14,000 feet, I believe. So that's our planned altitude. Now we're going to get ATIS.
Guardia information,
Juliet. For a minute.
1500 Zulu weather. Wind 010 at 13, visibility more than 10. Sky conditions indefinite few, 18,000 scattered, 24,000 broken, temperature 12. Dew point -12. Altimeter 3000. Arriving runway 04, departing runway 31. Advise on initial contact. You have
so
Juliet.
As you can see, we're at LaGuardia International Airport, and we'll be flying today to Eaton. Pretty soon here I'm going to set the GPS vectors and for the waypoints, and I'll bring up the map here. This is the flight plan. We're going to be going to the Huguenot VOR, to Rager intersection, to I think it's Hancock VOR, and then I think direct to, there's one more intersection there, and then direct to Eaton. We'll be doing the GPS approach into runway 1. I did make a mistake when I set that up, in that I left the vectors on. I should have just deleted them, because I don't have to worry about ATC. I'm not using ATC. I am using X-Life, but I'm not using ATC. We're loading up 12 passengers and fuel now with the FS Economy. We get a little bit of credit for this flight. And we'll turn on the no smoking sign or whatever. There we go. And one thing, in order to get the cabin pressure, you're going to have to turn on those bleed valves in order for the cabin to pressurize. It's going to pressurize off of the compressed air coming off of the engine. So that's where the bleed is coming from the engine intake. I am in sort of a place where it'll be hard to taxi out. You see the GPU unit there, so I am going to go ahead and push before I start up here. And I'll turn the battery on and disconnect the external power. Those are just switches in the cockpit. And get those generators on. There's the tow coming up. This is a different tow than when you're in the Airbus or the A737 or the Boeing 737. Sorry, yeah, I really like how the better pushback does that.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed.
And
Ready
if you do
to
not
connect.
have this free mod, I highly recommend you get the better pushback. It's one of the best free apps you can get for X-Plane.
Winching strap and adapter in position. Release parking brake when ready to start pushback.
So now I'm going to turn the battery and the generators on, and I'm going to disconnect from external power with the GPU so that they can disconnect the GPU there. So I'm ready to start up. I have everything armed. I have the fuel pumps on. I have the igniters set for automatic ignition. And as we're pushing back, I'm going to wait till we're done with the pushback, because you can see how close the guy there has to get to the props.
Starting pushback.
So I actually wait here because you don't start a King Air while you're being pushed on. I do have some experiment that I'm doing here with the X camera. I think it has some pretty cool little features here. These flybys are kind of cool as I'm pushing back. So we're going to push right out into the taxiway, and then we'll get started. I do have X-Life on. I don't really like this app. It's an app that adds traffic, but unfortunately the flight planning part of it is not very good. It's kind of hard to figure out, and there's not a whole lot of documentation that tells you how to do that nomenclature. So just going to leave it alone. I'm just going to try to visually look for traffic. I'm not going to really use ATC. But it does kind of, put your airport, makes your airport come alive a little bit with traffic on the ground, traffic in the air. You can hear some of the airplanes in the background right now. Some of them are taxiing kind of near us, so that's why you can hear it.
Operation complete. Go ahead and set the parking brake.
I'm sure the worker there appreciates that I'm not going to start with the props with him that close to it, so... Alright, we're all good.
So is disconnected and bypass bin has been removed. Hand signal on the right. We'll see you next time.
Thank you,
and have a safe flight.
See you, hand signal on the right. Now we can go ahead and we're clear. We can start our engines up. Alright, so to start the engines, pretty easy once you have everything set up to get started. You just go ahead and there's a switch there on the lower left. You make sure you have the fuel pumps on, and then the ignition is right there on the lower left for each engine, so you just hold it until it gets up. You can see the engine revving up there, and when it gets to about, I don't know, I want to say 25 to 30%, the injectors will automatically ignite and the engine will turn on. Alright, there it goes. And on the other side, we'll do the same. Alright, and we have ignition. Now we can turn those off. Alright, both engines are turning. Alright, now let's get our lights on. looks like we're just about ready to go taxi to the runway, which is straight ahead. I'm going to go ahead and turn my bleed valves on now so that we can start building air pressure as we climb. Now that we have pressure from the engines. And I guess we're ready to go. So that's how you start up a King Air C90. You know, I looked quite a bit online to try to figure out how to fly this plane, and there's not a whole lot of videos that talk about the King Air C90. I don't know if that's because the plane is just not popular, or if it's, you know, maybe the payware versions of the King Air 200, 200 or 300 are just far superior to this. I don't know because I don't have those, but I am going ahead and we'll go now. I think we're about to taxi. Here we go. Runway is straight ahead. Okay, like we said, we're not using ATC, so I'm just going to look for traffic and make sure we're not taking the active runway as someone's trying to land or take off. Gotta pause here at the hold line. This is also my first time flying out of LaGuardia. I'm not very familiar with this airport, so I had to study the airport diagram quite a bit before I got started. And there it goes, looking for traffic. And we're just about ready to take off. Okay, no traffic, let's get going. Now, just like with a regular jet engine, with a turboprop you also want to go 50% power until you're stabilized, and then go full throttle for takeoff. So let's get into position here, and then we'll start revving up the turbines. Okay. Okay. Alright, get our trim set up. And there we go, 50%. We're looking at the turbines, making sure they spool up. And now the rest of the way. Airspeed's alive, we're at the red arc there. We can lift off. That alert there is from X-Life. We don't care about that. We have positive climb, and we can start putting up the gear. There we go. Like I said, I did make a mistake with the GPS setup, so I'm actually going to make a wrong turn here initially, and we'll turn towards the east when I should be sort of heading northwest. So I know it's happening even when I do it, but I'm trying to follow the GPS flight plan. 1,000 feet. The city. That look nice, huh? Beautiful. Really good scenery there. Now, one thing that the King Air has is those annunciator panels. Now you'll notice that the left and right ignitions are left on, and that is intentional, and that's why they're green. Just in case you have a engine out or something, or cut off, it will try to reignite so long as the engine is turning at the right speed. So you want to leave those on auto. Once I get established on a course, once I figure out what we're going to do here with the course, I'm going to go ahead and turn on autopilot for the rest of the way. But for now, I'm just going to navigate, trying to stay on the course prescribed by the GPS. Now, one thing I really like about the King Air is it's got just tons of power. It's not much faster than the Baron, but it's just that with the jet engines there, it's just got tons of power, and it can climb really, really well. At least under 10,000 feet, and then you'll have to start, working the props in order to get better climb rate. So what you're seeing there, I'm just a little confused why the GPS is telling me to turn right, but I'm going to pretend that ATC has told me to do that, so we're going to do that. Pretty soon I'm just going to figure it out. We're well on our way to climb. We're doing pretty good. The speed during the climb, we have a nice gentle climb up to altitude. Don't have to worry about mixture on a jet engine. It's automated, so the only thing you worry about with the mixture is you have a idle setting for when you're taxiing, and you have a full setting when you are when you're in the air. I'm like, wait a minute, look at the map. I'm like, why is it telling me to go right? I know that I'm going the wrong way, but so I finally fixed the GPS to go direct to the VOR. I think it's Huguenot, and then we go from there. Where is it telling me to go? So okay, so now we're going to get back on track. I make another mistake towards the end when I'm doing the GPS approach too, because I mistake a road for the runway and I get a little bit off, but I end up doing a circle to land in the approach anyway, so I don't violate the approach, but I do have to sort of circle around the airport until I figure out what I'm doing and I just basically enter left traffic. You'll see when I get there. So now we're getting back on course. Once I figure out where I'm supposed to be and getting back on track to the VOR, I'll throw on the autopilot and we'll proceed on course, and then I'll do a time lapse for that part of the video. I do want to mention some things going on with the channel. I've recently made some investments into new equipment, so I'm really happy about that. We have a new station that we're going to set up, just going to be dedicated to X-plane and simulation in general. We're going to be setting up a desk with virtual reality, and we've got a new computer that has a GPS, a graphics card, a GTX is what I meant to say, GTX 1080, and it's got lots of GPU memory on it, and the CPU is much faster than what we have here, and a lot more hard drive space, and along with that we have a new desk and it's going to be a new setup entirely. This will allow us to not have to set up and tear down the equipment every time we want to fly. Right now we have to set up and tear down the yokes on the desk because the computer we're using isn't really ours. We're sort of sharing it with my wife, and it's really for her business. So every time she has to do something, we have to get off of it. So it's kind of annoying, kind of disrupts us. So okay, so now I'm setting a GPS. Now that I know where the magenta line is, we're getting on course, and I've set up so that it will climb until we reach 18,000 feet. So I'm going to just monitor the climb and monitor the power. You can see now I am starting to increase the pitch on the prop. So I'm watching the engines, making sure that we're within operating ranges. I really want to get that fuel flow down to somewhere around 2, if I can. And as we get higher, the less fuel we'll need. And but we're going to need a little bit higher now for the climb, so I'm leaving it at about 3 on each engine. So look forward to we have some of that equipment arriving this week. Starting tomorrow, we'll get our first piece of equipment for the new setup. We'll do some unboxing videos perhaps, and we haven't done a review yet on the SciTech equipment, which is something I've been wanting to do now that I've worked with it for about 5 months. I definitely have formed some opinions about it, and there we go. Now that we're getting above 10,000 feet, down there are my pressure gauges for the cabin, and I'm just making sure that I'm increasing cabin pressure and that my differential is not going above 5 psi. So now for some external views while we're en route. Some cool flybys with orbits that we can do with X camera. It's kind of a cool tool. I really like this orbit view. It kind of is nice to use for cruising. Seeing the plane in the air like that. It's kind of cool. That's why we love it, right? But I do have to be careful because as I get higher, the air is getting thinner and thinner and thinner, and so the performance of the plane is needs to be adjusted to account for that, to make up for that. 14,000, it's pretty high for a prop-driven plane, even though the Baron can go higher than that. The King Air can go quite higher than that. So one thing you have to watch for is and one of the annunciator lights is a cabin pressure light, and if you haven't done the cabin pressure correctly, you will begin to have oxygen deprivation, and you will begin to black out. And this happens on pressurized plane. A lot of pilots don't know what's going on, don't know why it's happening. But all you really have to do to correct it is make sure you have your cabin pressure set right and turn on the bleed valves. That's where a lot of people forget to do, or they have their pressure dump valve left open, which means it's not doing anybody good anyway. So I'm checking. You see, I don't have the pressure dump on. I'm doing good there, and I'm adjusting my performance to get back down to 1,000 feet per minute because I was getting a little slow and sluggish as the air was getting thinner and thinner. Still pretty good on performance. So notice I forgot to put my transponder on. But I'd be squawking VFR. Okay, so we're about ready to go into time lapse, and we'll go into time lapse and come back to the flight as we're doing the approach. The approach we're going to do is for the GPS runway 1 into Eaton, which is pretty straightforward approach, and not that hard to follow. All right, we'll see you in a little bit. Alright, welcome back to our approach. Let's put up the approach plate real quick to Eaton so we take a look at it. So the approach is pretty basic. Those arcs down at the bottom mean that anywhere between those waypoints you can descend, and I think it's saying descend down to 5,000 when you're more than 4 miles out, and then you can go down to 4,000 when you're less than 4 miles out of the waypoint. So we're proceeding to do that. We're starting our waypoint to the rightmost waypoint to start the approach, and we're proceeding to descend. We have a, not a very thick cloud deck to get through, but we're heading direct for that waypoint, and then we're going to turn left, and then that should line us up to the runway. You can see we're kind of a little bit high now, but when we get to that waypoint, we should be right around 5,000, and by the time we're at that starting waypoint, we should be at 4,100 or something like that. Okay, we've hit the cloud deck. Won't take long to get through it. Still on course. I've started to reduce the pitch of the props, and we're doing that gradually as we're coming in. See, we have no reference to the ground or anything, so we have to start slowing the plane down so that we can drop the gear and start applying flaps. Now, one thing about landing a turboprop engine that's very, very different from a piston engine prop plane is that with a turbine engine, you're going to have a very slow response, or a much slower response when you're adding power. So because of that, you're pretty much going to keep some level of power the entire way down, all the way even to the time you land. And that's different because you're used to like being able to just apply power when you need it, have it immediately go around or whatever, correct, make some micro corrections with your glide slope using power. With a turboprop and a jet engine, it's much more, you have to really plan that out much better. You're going to have to carry some level of power all the way down, and I think I start to target with the King Air somewhere around 80 or to 85% power as I'm coming down, kind of depending on my airspeed and how I'm doing with the airspeed. I think I'm at 85% right about now. But point is, you're not going to cut the engines off like 200 feet above the runway, or whatever. You're not going to cut the engines off until you're pretty much landed. And with a King Air, you also have what you call like for reversers. What it does is it puts the pitch of the prop blades into a negative pitch position. The plane gets really loud when that happens, but the net effect is that you have sort of a reverse thrust. Alright, dropping the gear now. I've slowed down the plane enough. And we're going to make sure those lock into place. And we have all greens. We're good. Okay, by the time we get to that waypoint, we're going to be at about 4,100. We're tracking well with that. And like I mentioned earlier, I do kind of mistake some road or something for the runway, because I've never been to Eaton before this this flight, so it's a little bit embarrassing, if you will, but I just end up going back up to pattern altitude, a little above pattern altitude, and circle around into the pattern and then come in for a landing. So you'll see me do that, and you'll see me go, oh, there it is. Oops. And very soon here we're going to disengage the autopilot and take her the rest of the way in manual flying. Now for some reason this King Air, it only gives you multiples of 200 feet when you're setting altitude. So that's kind of strange. That's why I'm at 4,200, but I can't actually set 4,100 on it. Well, we just disengaged the autopilot. You heard the autopilot warning go off, so now we're on our own. So I'm looking for that waypoint to be reached. Then we'll turn in. That pretty much will line us up to runway 1, and then we'll fly the altitude steps per the approach. Now it took me a little while also to figure out what the correct landing speed was for this airplane. I couldn't really find it published anywhere, but I figured somewhere around 90 to 100 knots on the airspeed seemed to be about right. I know that's a guess, but I think that's about right. We're putting in our approach flaps now, and we're about to start our turn in. So once we get past the Gins intersection, we'll head towards Fanub, and we can go down to 3,000 feet. From there at, I think it's Olgae, or I'm not sure how you pronounce it, OLGAE, we can go down, once we get past Fanub, we can go down to 2,100. And then our circling altitude is 1860 with the I think the elevation is around 1,024 for the runway, so that puts us about 1,000 feet above the runway. But the cloud deck is well above that, so we're actually in visual conditions, which allows me to do the circling to land. So there's like a little hill or something right along this approach that sort of obscures my view of the runway, and that's one of the reasons why I mistake it for something else. But like I said, it's the first time I've been in here, but I noticed that right on the approach there's a little bit of a hill there that we have to kind of just fly over, and then you have a good view of the runway after that. But at this point, don't have any. I don't have a view of where the runway is at, and I've hit my 3,000 feet now, so I'm leveling off. But I still have no idea where the airport is. I haven't seen it yet. I'm starting to drift a little bit to the right too, which is also part of my problem. It helps, it kind of made me look in the wrong spot, so to speak, because I didn't realize I was getting a little bit too far right. So you see that lake there, and the airport is actually just past, I think, that hill at the lake. And I still don't see it. But I'm wondering, oh wait, is that it right there? There's a little clearing. I'm wondering if it's somewhere over there. You can see I'm clearly pointing to it, but without me being able to see that airport very clearly, I do kind of shoot the runway. I'm kind of basically doing a visual at this point. See that that road, or it kind of looks like the runway. I think that's it, but there's that little hill there right past that field, and the runway is actually right behind it. So so I start going, well, I think I see the runway, so I'm going to head over there. So, but my bad. Important to watch your speed when you're flying the King Air. I mean, it's important to watch that, on every plane. But remember that the King Air is a much heavier plane. You're dealing with a much more powerful engine, or set of engines. So you have to really make sure that you're managing all that correctly. Managing the power, managing the torque, managing the props, and everything. So is that the runway? Okay, so here's my full flaps. And I'm starting to doubt myself. I'm going, wait a minute, that doesn't look like a runway to me. That's darn peculiar. And I still don't really see the airport. It's there, down there somewhere. Now I'm thinking that field is it? Maybe it's a grass field, but And now I'm going way off course. Like, no, that's not it. So I do what I should have done, and if I was in VR, this wouldn't have been a problem. I start looking around, because without being in VR, you're kind of tunnel vision. At this point, I'm thinking about going around and doing a misapproach. But I think I see the airport kind of at the last minute, so I don't. I just go ahead and do a circling to land. So I'm over the hill now, and the airport is off to my left. You can see the deflection of my radial there is, I'm way off. Right about now I notice it. Now, technically I went below what I should have been without seeing the runway, but I am in VFR conditions, so I'm like, wait a minute, where is it? But I have leveled off at this point because I'm looking for it. Think it's now coming into view off to the left there, but I still haven't seen it. But I'm too far off now to attempt that landing in a King Air, so I am going to go around. There it is. There's the runway. Now I see it. This is about this time I see. Okay. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to make that. I'm almost midfield, actually, so time to do circle of the land. I'm actually no longer below where I should be. I'm actually above the circling altitude. But I am going to go ahead and enter the pattern and just do a visual landing at this point. And that's no different in a King Air than it would be in a Baron. You know, you kind of do the same kind of you know, flight pattern there, sort of the rectangular pattern. But you're in a much higher performance plane, so instead of 1,000 feet above the runway, you should be more at 1,500 to 2,000 above the runway, or above the field. I go a little bit above that here, but I'm keeping track of kind of where I am at with the airport. I'm looking at my my radial there, and now I'm going to turn upwind. Oh, sorry, crosswind. And I'll try to just do a pattern. Let's try to stay about 3,000 feet or so at this point. So I'm getting my bearings. I'm just going to go ahead and turn into the downwind leg. Hopefully my passengers aren't freaking out about this, right? I have 12 passengers, remember? Okay, runway heading, or opposite of runway heading, I am going to level out on my downwind. And this is where VR would be very, very handy right now, because I can sort of keep my bearings much better on the runway while flying the plane. So I decide I'm going to go to about where that hill is ahead, and then I'm going to turn base to final right about at that point, which should give me plenty of room for a final approach into Eaton. Now, if you're having trouble, you know, when I first started flying the King Air, I found that I was having some pretty hard landings, and I figured out it was because I was treating it like the Baron, and I was trying to cut the power off too soon, and that just slows you down too much, and you end up, you know, just dropping out of the sky. Basically, you have a much bigger plane. You can't really do that anymore. So remember to keep powered on landing all the way in, so that you can keep it nice and well controlled throughout the entire descent. Alright, turning base, getting my bearings for final. And taking the visual approach. There's the airport over there, and I'm a little high, you can see by the glide slope. That's fine. Let's turn into final. Fly back to the runway, and we'll get on glide slope. So I think I have my power at about 86% right now on each engine. My prop should be fully in. Don't have to worry about mixture. It should be full. Or at least you're Okay, I'm on glide slope, turning into final, lining up to the runway. Gonna try to slow down and touch down at about, I want to say 90. A little high, have some altitude to bleed off here. Have a little bit, maybe a little bit slight crosswind going on. Good, clearing the trees. I am a little fast. So I gotta blade that off. Here we go. Leaving the power on. Finally touched down. And now the reversers. Hear those? There they go. That slows you down very effectively on these turboprop engines. Alright, reversers off. And this airport is not very, it doesn't look like it's very well developed, so I think I just park into this taxiway here. But not bad landing, not a bad first time into this airport. There's some hills surrounding it, so it makes it a little more of a challenge. So I'm just going to stop here, and we'll turn the engines off. Auto igniters off, and the inverter's off, and then I'll cut the fuel. Lights off. Bleed valves can come off too, now that we're on the ground. And we can dump the pressure. Now we can dump cabin pressure and equalize. Alright. And to shut off the engines, all we got to do is cut the fuel. Alright, we don't leave it there. We go to external power once the engines are stopped. That beacon can come off. Yep, telling the passengers we've arrived. Okay. And let's go to external power. I think I turned it on here. Yep, there it is. External power, the battery can come off and the generator can come off. Alright, and the fuel pumps can come off. Alright, let's let our passengers out, and we have finished our flight, our first flight with the King Air. I hope this was fun and entertaining for you. It was a good flight for me to take, and it was kind of fun, even though it's a lot more difficult plane to fly. But it was kind of fun learning this plane, and being able to fly it now it's good, because on FS Economy I can now take 12 passengers instead of just 5 passengers, or 11 passengers, I should say, with myself included. So let's finish up the flight, and with that, we hope you enjoyed, and well, we'll see you next time on Father-Son Flight Sim. All right, have a great day, and as soon as we get that equipment and new cockpit set up, we'll have some more videos to show you. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.